Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another in the Rallyware webinar series. So today, we're going to focus on a specific direct selling company and how they set their distributors up for success. I'm very excited to be joined today by Amanda Lorenz from that particular direct selling company, Hugh Grace. But before we begin, let me share a few logistics for today. So we will be recording today's session, and you will all receive a link to that recording. Also, after today's discussion, we will be addressing any questions that you might have. So as we go along, and as you are thinking of them, please enter them into the Q&A, and we will address those at the end of our conversation. So, Amanda, welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. So as a little bit of background, Amanda and I have known each other through her direct selling career, but even before direct selling, she was with some well-known brands like JP Morgan Chase and Wells Fargo. And in her roles within those organizations, it was always in learning and development, training, that type of thing. And then, so this is a great story I didn't know until I was asking her for some background information. On a whim, she became a rep for a direct selling company and then was so successful at that, earning those top levels of income for that company, that Avon asked her to come on in the corporate capacity with her L&D background and leverage that with inside of Avon. And now, after working for those big three brands, we've got her at not quite as well known a brand at this point in time, Hugh Grace. So, Amanda, thanks again for being with us, and give us a little bit. Many people in our audience may not know Hugh Grace, so give us a little background. Their business model, that type.
Sure. No, I'm happy to be here. I took the leap in working with Avon, who right now, well, I don't know about today, it's been a couple of years, but arguably had one of the largest field sizes in the United States, with almost 250,000 reps at one point. So I had the unique opportunity to speak to the founders of a new and emerging direct selling company called Hugh Grace. And our model is very similar. So we are a traditional direct selling model with our reps, who we call advocates, for our company. And we've been in business now, just coming up actually next month will be our official 2-year anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So I know you started at Hugh Grace maybe at the beginning of the pandemic, as the pandemic came in there. So tell us a little bit what it was like seeing that sort of tidal wave hit and how you approached that at Hugh Grace.
Sure. So actually, our anniversary is 2 years official in May, but I've been with Hugh Grace for 3 years. So I started with the founders. I was the second person hired to really come on and take a look at what the founders' vision was, and leveraging some of the background I had being in the field, also being with a company like Avon and that learning and development piece. And so coming on, we were set to launch in April of 2020. And that was plan A. That was plan A written all over it. I got hired, it was all set. And then, as we all know, the world shut down. So our plan A quickly turned into a plan B, C, D, E, F, G, X, double A, double Z, because it was difficult to get, product and all of those components. So we had to structure our launch in a way that was a little bit gated. So allowing people to come on. We didn't have as much product as we anticipated. So it was a gated approach that we had to quickly take back to the drawing board and figure out to start and move things along, but knowing we didn't have all of the resources. So that first year, ironically, it didn't go with the big launch that we expected. But what it allowed us to do was it forced us to be very slow in our approach to have our advocates come online, start selling, having conversations, using our technology. And we were able to really, for lack of a better term, practice for that year until things kind of loosened up. And then we had our big official launch in May. So it was truly a blessing in disguise to have that year to get us up and ready, which I think prepared us far more than the original Plan A.
That's great. So that's a perspective of how the pandemic affected a company that was just in the beginning stages. As you've had experience across the industry for years, as you watched other direct selling companies, maybe more established direct selling companies, handle the pandemic, what did you see? What kind of approaches, what kind of maybe positive things that companies did or negative things that you noticed happening during that time frame?
Sure, and I do. I keep up with a lot of friends and colleagues that I've built great relationships with in the last few years, not only at Avon but really across the direct selling landscape. So in the last couple of years, and specifically during the pandemic, I think what people did really well is we again, almost by no choice of our own, we were forced into some technology like Zoom calls that maybe wasn't something that was so familiar. So it was leveraging how we could connect. And I saw a lot of companies start to do demonstrations that are something that's really common in direct selling. So when you're trying to tap into a network that's not the traditional in-home party, but how can you sell a fragrance with a beautiful scent digitally or online when you can't smell it? Or how can you sell something that's maybe it's a food-based? I've got a friend of mine who works for a company that sells healthy food when you can't taste the food. So it was digging deep into trying to translate sensory experiences in a digital world. And a lot of that was done virtually or by way of even mailing once that was deemed a little more acceptable, but doing things or hosting something in tandem. So maybe sending somebody, a meal kit and then coaching them and doing it together online. So you get that sensory experience, but you get my professional expertise right here and live.
That's great. So that's sort of how direct selling companies dealt with that. So what do you think about the distributors' expectation in direct selling during that pandemic? Do you think that changed on what they're expecting now to have in their hands moving forward, sort of being affected by the pandemic?
I do think so. And I think very much like the direct selling landscape has changed in the last 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20, 30. Again, Avon was a 130 plus year old company. So it changes and evolves with what society looks like. And for us, a couple of years ago, that was the pandemic. So if I think about today, what some of those expectations are, I think it's probably a couple of them. One is the flexibility. There are a lot of components where we can return back to what was normal before the pandemic. You can go do in-home events. You can go to a store like where you weren't able to before. But also, we learned in the last few years that you don't have to only do it this way. So I believe that the distributors are looking for companies to provide those options. So if I want to host or if I want to conduct my business in this fashion, I'd like to have the tools and support available. If I want to do something that's a little more digital, I want to have those tools available to me or a potential hybrid. So I think it's making sure that all of the options are available with how people are choosing to conduct business today.
Okay. And everybody out there, for those of you, and I know there are a number of you who attend the Rallyware webinar series on a regular basis, and a lot of times we start out with slides, statistics, whatever. So today it's more conversational. It's more that fireside chat feel. So as we go through this today, as you sense the value or lack of value in this approach, please let me know. Rich@rallyware.com for those of you who don't already have that. But I think this is going to be fun as we go through that. And with what Amanda just shared, it's our perfect opportunity to sort of transition into talking about digital transformation, if you will. And full transparency, full disclaimer, Hugh and Grace does use Rallyware as their digital platform. And she also had experience with that at Avon. But as I shared, I don't want this to be a Rallyware commercial. I want this to be about digital transformation across direct selling, regardless of the tools you use. So let's talk a little bit about Grace, digital transformation. What role has digital transformation played in this new and emerging business model at Hugh and Grace?
Sure. So I think for us, and again, we're just a couple of years in, and I take some of my comparisons from my previous role, where here's what we did, this is what was successful, here's where I have experience, and I know what works. In the last couple of years, we as a company, and even Amanda as an individual, I've had to adapt. I have a ton of experience in these different areas, but it challenged me and our team to go beyond that scope, right? Which is what you always thought you knew may not work as it used to today. So part of the digital transformation was taking, and again, kind of in that last example, things you might have previously done in an in-person environment and taking them digital. So looking at ways to change a sensory experience, looking at those, making sure that somebody walks away with a value add. So Zoom, we've heard the term, and it was a couple of years ago. Gosh, a couple of years ago already. Zoom, people are on Zoom all of the time. And now it's so much you don't want to be maybe on Teams or some of those videos. So it's looking at how can you still deliver information by way of content, education, to your workforce, so that they have what they need in order to be successful in that flexible world that they're living in.
So you talked a little bit earlier about, we know Zoom, in fact, what was the phrase of 2020, right? You're on mute or something like that. But from a distributor's perspective, you talked about, getting them comfortable with Zoom. What other pieces of the digital puzzle did maybe they struggle with or have to adapt to, that kind of thing?
I think there were two of them. One of them was the learning component. So again, I have a strong passion for L&D, and I always have. So making sure that people have the time and the wherewithal to come on in the direct selling world. It's a volunteer workforce. I can't make Rich join my webinar as much as I want him to, and as much as I know his potential. I guess it was almost a marketing in a way to get Rich to want to join, to learn, some of those components about our company in particular. One of the things that we looked at is, our brand. We can talk about it in a little bit. Our brand was, we sell skincare and wellness, but there's an education component to it. It wasn't something like we're going to sell this scrunchie, where if I show you this scrunchie, you know what to do with it. The education component's done from 1982, right? Everybody knows what to do here. With new, innovative, revolutionary products, there's an educational component that isn't. It's not intuitive. So if I talk to Rich, he might not know that he needs this product yet. It's not as easy as saying, oh, I did need that scrunchie. So we needed to make sure that we could capture that audience in a way that informed, so that they could go out and cascade that message to their network in a traditional direct selling model.
So you just used a phrase that I overuse in direct selling, but we all know that it is a volunteer workforce out there, right? You can't make Rich attend that webinar. So here brings up I don't care what technology you can deliver as Hugh and Grace. If they don't adopt that technology it's not going to do the company or them any good. So let me ask you this. Do you have any tricks up your sleeve on how to get your field to adopt some of the things that you are trying to empower them with?
Sure. And we've had a couple of tools. It's interesting. We had a texting tool, right? Who doesn't love a good text message?
Yep.
It was probably a year and a half ago. Our field was still, small and emerging. And it just didn't fly. I sat through the demo. I tried it. I tested it. I thought it was amazing. But I couldn't get the adoption that I initially wanted. And I think it was for a couple of reasons. Again, our field was relatively small. And I think in this particular industry, you need buy-in, right? You need all of the buy-in. I can't be the only person using the tool, because then it's only working for me. If my team's not using it, I can't talk about it. They can't relate to it. And therefore, it doesn't really take off. In this particular industry, where the buy-in is a big piece. And actually, I vividly remember at Avon, when I first came on board, we actually weren't using Rallyware yet. It was brand new. And again, with a huge workforce or a huge field, that's a big ship to turn around. So we had been talking to Rallyware and had all the cool things. Same thing, did the demo. I was bought in, but I needed to get the leaders bought in. So we did a little bit of a launch. And again, I was so excited, but that was my excitement. And what I missed in that moment was translating my excitement to the field, because I am one voice and they are tens of thousands. So we actually went back at about, 45, 60 days or so, and brought our leaders back in and gave them and showed them the value of the tool. And I did the same thing with this text tool. I remembered, hey, wait, you learned this lesson before. Get them back on and bring them in on the value, and they become your megaphone. So that was something we had to go back on a couple of times. And now in releasing any technology, it's part of the standard practice.
It's interesting you say that. We just had a new prospect who is now a new client, and we went through the typical demos, sold the people at corporate. And then this company wisely they made me do another demo, right? To 12 to 15 of their top level field leaders, not only so they could see and touch it, so they could ask questions about. And I thought, boy, that is one smart group that actually gets that buy-in, because we know, going back to this adoption level, people out there in our audience should know that. At least what we have seen, right? When somebody rolls out Rallyware, anybody coming into that company brand new, they're more likely to adopt it. You're going to have 40%, 50%, whatever adoption rate with all the new enrollees. It's those old dogs that we try to teach new tricks to, right? That's when you're only going to see that 10 to 20. So, there are two different elements for companies out there thinking about digital transformation on how they're going to see adoption, and then what they have to do to affect adoption.
And I think I agree.
Yep.
And I think, to add on to that is I agree. And I think that as a best practice, it is making sure that your top leaders are bought in. It's something we did very strongly at Avon, and we do here at Hugh Grace as well. Anytime we're going to introduce a product or incentive or technology, we do have our voice of the field. We've got a select handful of advocates who will bounce questions off and poke holes in things. They're so good at that. They'll poke holes in anything. But one of the pieces to add on that I think could be very helpful is, when you think about the corporate office, when I in my role am vetting something new, I'm fully immersed. I've had probably weeks and months to digest and understand. I've talked about it. I've told the team. And when I pitch this to the field, they've probably seen it once or twice. So they can poke holes, they can ask questions, so they know about it, but I'm fully immersed. And so it's a continued education. So if you get the field's buy-in, which is awesome, they love it, they love the tool, keep them going and check back with them in a couple of weeks, in a month. And then the biggest thing I learned very early on, several years ago, show them the results. did you know in 30 days that just by you using this tool, Rich, and joining my webinar, that your sales have increased by 30%? And that becomes real. That's no longer a pitch. It's no longer a demo, but those are real numbers. Put it into dollars. Or Rich, your team has grown by X%, and that translated into X dollars in earnings for you. And now I'm your biggest advocate, no pun intended, your biggest advocate for this particular tool or program that you're using. Put it into there, make it personal. And that way they will cascade that message far more than you ever could.
That's great advice. And I always like to listen to our customer success managers because they talk about how their different clients go after that adoption. Yeah. And there have been some really creative things like taking your leader level, right, and incentivizing them for how many people on their team actually engage with technology. Or one of them was even a brand new company, they wrote it into their Fast Start program. So my first month of Fast Start, whatever they normally required, $500 in sales, whatever, but 50 Rallyware points or something like that. So yeah, there's a lot of creativity out there. So as we talk about digital transformation, you have shared and you started with what I'll call L&D, right? The learning and development components of that. But now I know your perspective is changing. So to add on to that or to make it even stronger, I know you're looking at, rolling out elements of incentives and recognition and that kind of thing. So tell us a bit about your vision for the future with that at Hugh Grace.
Yeah, so we're very close. I know that Rich, you and I have talked specifically about this, but just in general, Rallyware is the platform that we choose, which has been really, it's been very successful for our field. But thinking about
the jury will disregard what the witness just said.
I was going to say that aside, in general, our train of thought is, again, learning and development is a passion. So that is something that is important to me with our field, is empowering and educating so they've got the tools to go out. But in thinking about the landscape and where we are right now, is how can you continue to keep people engaged? And if you have been part of direct selling for any period of time, fatigue sets in. It's not easy. It's not. I remember being a representative. It can be a lot of work, and so with that volunteer army, it can kind of have these different peaks and valleys. So keeping everybody engaged, and what can we do to accomplish a couple of goals? Engagement, because you do get fatigue. It's just, we're human. But also keep it exciting. And how can you do something that's different? There are so many options out there. There are so many options. Everybody knows somebody who's doing something. So how can we make it and make the job easier? So if we know that it's a lot of work, and if you're building a team and you're going to get fatigue, where can we fill in to make your tedious tasks something that you don't have to do, and you can focus on recruiting and selling, because that's where you're going to make money, that's where we're going to make money, and that's where everybody's happy. So we started the conversation, it happened to be with Rallyware, but really, if you think about it in any context, is how can we solve that problem? And it was a little bit of automation, and it was a little bit of the it was being proactive. So by the way of incentives and recognition, was looking at a distributor's behavior and picking out kind of our internal KPIs and targets where we need to be at their journey, and then providing the information on demand. So it didn't have to come via a webinar or a scheduled training, or truly in our context, we have our commissions engine is phenomenal. Shall remain nameless, but love what they're doing. So our commissions portal is great, but the way that our distributors are able to track their performance it just took a long time. it's fine once we got there. It took such a long time, and that impacted how we could run our business internally. We were less nimble and less flexible because we were dependent on a more antiquated tool. So looking at being able to incentivize and recognize our advocates in more real time, more rapidly, is giving them that achievement, that result, and it's less work for them than it was in the past. So we're seeing more activity. We're actually seeing more innovation from them. They don't have to worry about tracking manual points and dollars and how to see things. They'll be able to do that so much more quickly now and leave time to be more innovative in building their businesses.
Boy, what you just described is what I coined the term time scraping, right? We talk about this volunteer workforce. They've got so many other things going on in their day that in those in-between moments of the day, waiting to pick up Johnny at soccer practice, waiting at a doctor's appointment, what are those elements of my business that I can do right there, and it can make a difference to my bottom line, right? So that is, and then what you said before, you said they have so many choices. Folks, and I know I'm preaching to the choir out there in this audience, but our competition is just that. It's for their time, whether that's a direct selling company, whether that's another gig opportunity. They've only got so much time. They need to make a few extra dollars. If you don't make it as easy as possible for them to do that, they'll find something else. That is just such a valid point.
Yeah, it is. And sorry to cut you off. Adding one more piece is thinking about taking the time, and you mentioned it, where there are so many options. I mean, I could do so many different things, and it has to be, to position yourself in a way where you get picked almost, right? And from an incentives and recognition standpoint, is in a previous world, if I wanted to see my performance, I could go and look at it. I could go and retrieve the information when I found the time or I dedicated the time. Whereas thinking about how we are looking at digital transformation and how we are moving along with where the people are, now I can deliver that information to you. So I don't have to wait for you to go look at it. I can actually say, Rich, guess what? Did you know you're 5 points away? Just 5 points. And here's what you can do about it. And so now it's going to prompt you in a way that is proactive instead of reactive. And that part alone is huge for us.
I agree with you. And that's a lot of times how I'll, talk to people about Rallyware. All of our back office partners are great companies that give and provide amazing amounts of detailed information and data, right? But I still have to figure out what to do with this. Right. How can you, through digital transformation, tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, Amanda, you're only just what you were explaining right there. That, I couldn't have said it any better myself. So still talking a little bit about incentivizing, recognizing. Yes, it's very important to that volunteer workforce, because let me tell you, seriously, I wouldn't have the guts to be an independent distributor. It's a lonely business out there, right? You go one day and you make, I'm thinking my Pampered Chef days. You have a $1,200 show, you're a rock star. You go out the next night, 2 people show up and you make $37.50. Yeah. That is just like disheartening. So anything you can do to make it, to shore them up when those kind of things happen. Because think about it, your data knows when you had that $37 show. Mm-hmm. And they know you're going to need a little bit of boost and pat on the back, right, to keep you moving forward in the business. So that's a very real element of just keeping engaged a volunteer workforce. Are you going to do anything differently with your incentives programs? Let's talk about just that, because everybody knows direct selling companies, we got more incentives running than we can possibly know what to do with. Are you seeing a different approach because of what you're going to do digitally than what you do today?
Yes, actually, yes. I think two components to that is we have again we have a couple of elements of a very traditional direct selling cadence. There's the annual incentive trip. You've got your annual leadership. We've got some monthly incentives. But what we're able to do with some of the digital transformation is we will be able to do. This is probably not the right word, but you'll get it, like a sub incentive. So if we go back and we're planning something that's say 6 months, right? We've got the 6 months. It's a long journey. People come in and out during those 6 months. This will allow us to do those sub based on where our business is. And specifically thinking about next month. So we're in an incentive right now. We're month 2, no, we're month 1 into 6 months. We're already thinking next month is our anniversary month. So how can we push something there? We've got this incentive running over the summer. We all know what that means. So we're going to be able to flex this in a way that is mirrored with our business. Because we're only a couple of years in, we're still learning a lot. We don't have a ton of trends because we've only got, 2 years ago today, we had one distributor. It's not a fair metric to say, wow, look at the growth and pattern. So we're still learning a little bit of that, and we're not a year out so far in full planning. We're still a little bit dialed in, or less dialed in to see how our business is moving and shaping. And I mean, we know that right now the industry is taking a deep breath. So we'll be able to be really flexible on precisely where we need to be with our business, our product, our field, and the industry as a whole.
So what you just said makes me think of a concept that wasn't on our prep questions, but you and I both know that when we're talking about incentives and direct selling, there's a certain percentage, right? 1% to 2%, 2% to 5%,
right.
Whatever that is. Those folks, they're going to always achieve that incentive.
Giving it to them, that's right.
What we are trying to do, right, is what we affectionately call moving the middle. Is digital transformation going to help that? Is I&R going to, that kind of thing? What do you think?
I think it definitely is. I think you said it was the tap on the shoulder. So those top 1% or 2%, they're the ones that are going to get it. They're helping me, right? They're helping talk to the field. But in the middle, Rich, if I can tap you on the shoulder and say it's just 5 points away, I can tap so many more people on the shoulder. So that is going to help me, even if I convert a small percentage of that middle. It's a percentage I may not have captured before, or it's releasing some of the human capital I have internally. We are not a huge team yet. Amanda wears a lot of hats here at Hugh Grace. And if I can focus my time on other income producing activities that are going to help move our business because this tapping is going on, then I've checked that off of the list. And I can focus my time on the next biggest, best idea that's going to help move the needle. So I think it actually is a twofold solution that I think it is going to help us in the very near future.
So the reason I asked that is because you talked about these sub-incentives, right? Or whatever the term was.
I don't have a good word for it. I need to think of something.
I understood exactly but in this incentive, now because here, folks, in digital, you've got all this data you can take a look at. So I know there's a group that is over the halfway point to the incentive, but not to the 75% point. What can I do? So you can target that way in this, right? So now all of a sudden, I've got the ability. And so like you said, we could try moving that 51%, 74% group and seeing what percentage of those we actually got to reach that all-encompassing incentive that way, right? So those are some new elements that when you talk about digitally transforming the business, you've got the ability to play with. And here again, play is the operative term. It's very iterative in how you can digitally apply something compared to in the old days, paper handouts, brochures, whatever that might be, how we delivered that information. So I forgot how you phrased it, but you just used a phrase about the state of the industry. You didn't say challenges. You phrased it so.
I said the industry's taking a deep breath. Is
there
how
you
I
go.
feel.
That's a perfect talk. Let's talk about that, right? So let's get out of digital. Let's talk a little bit about the industry, the future, but let's talk about the deep breath we're seeing happen across many, many companies. Let's first start at Hugh and Grace, and then I'm going to ask you to raise up your perspective to the industry as a whole. Yeah. So what are you guys seeing from this recession, from this, we've got so many different terms coming from so many different governmental entities that, how's it affecting Hugh and Grace today?
Yeah, so I think, gosh, it's a good question. And, I wish I was a wizard of sorts. And,
you'd have a different job right now, let me tell you.
I would have a different answer. So, we're seeing we're seeing it, I think, much like lots of other companies. And when I think about it at scale, again, I've mentioned we're a couple of years in versus being a 10, 15, 20 plus year old company. So, we're on a growth trajectory, and while we are very fortunate, we are very, very fortunate to still be growing month over month. I think it is attributed to a couple of reasons. Is we are a mission-based company. We've got our product suite is really focused around being something that is, about, like a skincare. Everybody knows about skincare, but kind of, tweaking a little bit. So it opens a conversation versus being just another skincare product. But, we've got some projections, and again, we're here, but it's not what we thought a year ago. So this is where kind of painting that picture and going back to those choices. Somebody who chooses to come in and support a brand is going to be far more engaged and valuable than somebody who thinks, I can give this a try. So it goes back to that education and that giving that reason, so those choices are made, and that person becomes, it's a little less difficult to get them engaged because they're right there with you.
So I am very glad to see you talk about your trajectory being this way instead of, we're always trying to sell the hockey stick growth in direct selling, I think sometimes, it's terrible for people thinking about coming into this business model, if you will. So, we're very aware of the publicly held direct selling companies and some of the struggles that we've seen with them. Big news came out just the other day or 2 days ago about, one of the icons in the industry type thing. So what do you think with direct selling? Are we looking at something that's inevitably going to become extinct? Or what are your thoughts?
Okay, this is the disclaimer if we're recording.
And this is my opinion.
This is my real opinion. It's tried and true. Direct selling has been around in so many forms and fashions for so many years, and the itself has withstood so many different individual life events, economic events, and so forth. Do I think it continues to evolve and change? I absolutely do. And actually, a great example is taking direct selling out of it, but think about the real estate industry, right? I've been very fortunate. I've been close to the real estate industry for many, many years. But 15 years ago, if you didn't have your realtor right next to you, you couldn't get into a house. You didn't know it was on the market. You didn't know anything. And then with the incorporation of Zillow, Realtor.com, and I don't know where everybody is here, but companies like
all over the world.
Yeah, Open Door. The technology has allowed it where somebody can advertise their home online. Any consumer can look at it, and there's a digital lockbox that vets your background, and you can go in at your own time and at your leisure. So does that mean that the realtor is extinct? It absolutely doesn't. Does it mean that the realtor has had to adapt their business? It absolutely does. So it's not a replacement for something that is tried and true. You cannot replace that expertise, but you do have to adapt. And I believe that that is what is happening in direct selling. I believe that is what has already happened in direct selling many, many times over. And I think about another example in the direct selling industry. I believe, am I allowed to say other companies' names if I don't work for them?
Yes, you are. That makes it even easier.
All right. So I remember it was early 2010, like it was the introduction of the Facebook party. Like, what the heck? Who thought of that idea? That was brilliant, right? Did it replace the party concept? It didn't. Did it enhance the party concept? It did. So right now we're figuring things out. There are a lot of other options out there. You can be a brand affiliate. You can do, all the gig stuff that's out there. There are more options. It's a constant adaptation in the industry, but currently nothing is replacing that relationship. I mean, you can't replace that relationship in the store. So that's just part of the growth. And I think we've got to figure some stuff out. It's not as easy as it was in 2020 when things were booming. So we're all back with our pencils, but I think we're going to get there.
So those are great. I'm glad to hear you say that because you get both sides of that equation, right? But those are great examples because you also gave an example of outside the direct selling industry with the real estate. And folks, let me tell you, many of you know Rallyware works both inside and outside of direct selling. The things we talk about with learning, development, incentives, recognition, that is no different for those frontline employees out there, right? So anywhere you can see creativity in somebody trying something new and think about how we can layer that over the top of the direct selling way to go to market, that's the best approach we can have. But you brought into one other element there that you said brand affiliate, right? You see all these big established companies and they're going like, okay, we've got distributors here with a genealogy that is 3, 5, infinite levels deep, right? Now we're going to try this affiliate approach, either incorporating them together, keeping them separate. Any ideas? Not ideas. Any thoughts on that? Is Hugh Grace toying with that idea?
Yeah. So actually, we started off with our traditional rep model and an affiliate. And it's interesting you bring that up because if you think about like being an Amazon affiliate, or I think Nike does a good job, if you really peel that back, they're kind of thinking, we used to be brick and mortar, but those direct sellers, they're doing something right. I feel like they adapted to, again, that tried and true model that's been around forever. So we're in a little bit of back and forth, but it is an option. So that's exactly what I thought when it's out there. It's the same thing. So yeah, we of course we are definitely appealing to the affiliate because why not? Well, it's not about holding steady. It's about moving and being able to mold a little bit, and that's where people are landing. It's appealing. It's easy. So we're absolutely embracing the affiliate model as well.
Okay, interesting to know. So on that note, I'm going to wrap up with one of the final questions since we're moving into that 45-minute mark already. At first, let's start with you and Grace. How are you planning for 2024 and beyond? I know you said you were a lot closer in on that perspective, but there's got to be some thoughts around what the next year, 2 years means. Yeah,
good question. So to be fair, we do have our 5 year. We've got the traditional 5-year, 3-year plan. We've got the boards up, right? But we also are remaining flexible in this environment. So we do. We've got 2024 is set up. From our perspective, in a traditional direct selling way, we have already secured things like our annual conference. We are planning. We're planning our incentive trip. We've got a full product pipeline that is. I am so excited about it. These are products that we've worked, we've worked really, really hard on, but are things that are in my opinion, ahead of the curve. So the excitement level to bring out product is a big push for us. Again, going back to Hugh and Grace, we're really a mission-based company. So providing a solution to live a lower toxin-free lifestyle is what we strive. And we do that through product. So bringing some innovative products that are going to solve a problem that some people may not even know they have is exciting. And we've got a big plan for that later this year and a big plan going into 2024.
No, it's great news. That's exciting news. I'm so happy you are where you are at today. I mean, I know your co-founders and they are the salt of the earth people. So.
I agree. They're great. They are incredible. They are smart. And I know a lot of people in the industry, there are a lot of founders, and I've not worked for any others, right? I've only heard the tales. But truly, the founders of our company, Sarah and Ben Jensen, are the most real humans. They are so passionate. And if there is a definition of grind and hustle, it's Sarah and Ben. They are with us, the team, boots on the ground, and leveraging everything that they have to dial it right back down to our advocates. Everything they do is for the advocate, and it shows in every action, every call, everything that they do. And that makes me proud to be part of this company.
And well, it should. That's great. So I'm going to go back to sharing our screen for just a minute, because to finish our formal presentation, if you will, I really just want to, so as you're thinking about digital transformation, and we sort of worked our way towards the whole rewards and recognition piece of what it can do for you. I mean, these are real world statistics from our customers on what you can realize if you digitally transform that business. And this is what Amanda is going to be making sure that we can prove to her as they put it in place. So Amanda, again, thank you so much for your time today. I do have two questions that came in from the audience that I would like to at least get us to respond to a little bit. I guess we've answered a number of these. So one was, as you approach incentives, knowing a certain amount will achieve. We talked about that. Here's a good one. You have had experience in both big and small direct selling companies. Is one easier than the other to digitally transform?
This is a great question. Absolutely not. I think when you use the word transform, again, I touched briefly on that example. That was a big learning for me. It's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. And I would say big company versus small company versus very established company and new company where they are open to newer behaviors. So it was, I think there were equal challenges. That big one at Avon, again, such a dynamic company. My time at Avon was so well spent. I have nothing but great things to say about the company, about the team, everybody that was there. But it was a bit, think about the big, Titanic we're turning. And right now I'm in a bit of a...
That's what they always say, right? Battleship in a bathtub.
Yeah, I'm like in a small ski boat right now. So it's easier. I can be far more nimble in this smaller company. And I'm also with a group of people who understand where we are in the business. So our field is made up of very well-established direct sellers from lots of companies. They've got a lot of experience. So we're able to pivot a little more quickly, and they're with me on this journey. Whereas in a larger, more established company, I had to do a lot more work on that buy-in, right? So this is what we've always been doing. You need to show me, because those are very deep-rooted direct sellers with a lot of right? One small tweak to a leg or, a percentage here and there can be tens, thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in income. So it's a far more delicate conversation. And that's why I really needed that buy-in. So here, getting the adoption is, I'll give you real quick. The challenge is we do have so much experience coming in, and everybody's done it their way. in 18 different places, and we're trying to figure out the best way for us. So we've got a lot of feedback. It's all good. It's well intended, but we need to then take those and hone in what's best for Hugh and Grace.
Oh, I remember those conversations well. You do a wonderful job of facilitating those. So,
Thank you.
Amanda, Lorenz from Hugh and Grace, thank you again so much for your time and for your discussion with us today. I hope everybody saw it as rewarding. I know that I did. And for those of you out there who've been on multiples, don't forget, reach out to me. Let us know what you think about this different format that we tried today. We're going to be trying some different things moving forward. But thanks again for attending the Rallyware webinar series. You will receive a link to this recording and can't wait to see you next time. So take care, everyone. Wonderful day wherever you are in the world.
Thank you.